Hello and welcome back to another Discovery review. I should probably move some of those boxes. Yes, I am back in Spokane, freshly off a train, so fresh that in fact I have unpacked exactly enough to do what you see here. I don't even have proper headphones to listen to this episode of Discovery. That's a different problem. I've got 4 rather large Eagle Moss boxes to unpack. I got like Ashens and the Polybius Heist action figures to unpack. But no, it's like, what time is it? It's almost 2 a.m. I got up at almost 8 a.m. this morning, and we're gonna watch some Discovery because you're here, that's why. Let's just get straight into it, because I might get tired by the end of this season finale. I'm looking forward to it. Let's hope they don't mess it up. I remember when you were just a baby. You were an awful, awful baby. And the less said about the terrible twos, the better. But they grow up so fast. I mean, could that have been a better ending? It's season 4 of Discovery. It's the best of Discovery by far. It's a fantastic season of Star Trek. It's one of the best seasons of Star Trek. One of the best stories. I think I've been getting smaller as this sentence goes on. And I didn't expect that much from that ending. I mean, I've talked a lot about sort of the big actiony battle ending. This was not that. In the best of ways. I mean, it had tension. It had conflict. No, it had all that stuff. But there was no big battle. Like, could you even call what Discovery and Book Ship did as a battle? Like, it was a battering ram, and that was it. But it was it was Star Trek. It had the tension. It had the evacuating Earth was tense to watch. I mean, it had weight. It had like the how many can we save? 450,000 from each. It's like that's here. That's this planet. That's our species. It's my city. Spokane is like a relatively small city. That's more than half. That's the entire population of humanity. Is rough, like about twice the size of my city. I mean, it was emotional. It was deep. All the threads we had tied together from the whole season. This is what happens when you plan out the ending to your serialized show. But beyond that, they really spent time and crafted an amazing story, not just in general, but also for what they wanted to tell, was the sort of COVID, an isolation coming together. It was beautiful. They fit so much into an hour as well, I feel. I kept feeling like the story was at an end in a lot of points, as well time-wise. I guess it is like a Lower Decks episode longer than the average Next Generation, so that's probably it. But it was, I mean, there was just a lot of threads. I didn't realize how many threads they had open that they kept closing. And 100 more. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to more Discovery. It's great now. I'm thinking this might be a storyline that has something for everyone. Because there's a lot going on. I mean, as I've said, I didn't think I could relate to this season at all. I don't think there's so much that character for me yet, but the first contact, I mean, last episode, I've praised heavily because it's beautiful. But you have, in this episode, you have people who've lost loved ones. You've had a lot of common lockdown sort of feelings expressed. You've had so much. You even had some bookends from Detmer's PTSD stuff that I'll get into in a bit. I'm really struggling to think of general thoughts, actually, because I was like, I really really enjoyed that, and now it's like, right, what bit of that do I want to talk about? I think the most impressive bit for me is honestly not having that big battle. The biggest complaint I had about season 3 was that treaty should have been signed. I mean, you can see my poorly explained if you really want. I go on a huge rant on it. It's probably an iCard up there now. But that treaty should have been signed. And it didn't, because shows need an action-packed finale. I mean, it felt like that. There was no reason that treaty shouldn't have been signed, in universe and out of universe. And this felt like just the acknowledgement of, yeah, okay, we don't actually have to have the super action-packed season finale. I mean, tension, yeah. I mean, you can have tension, you can have a lot, you can have loss, characters die, but there was no big battle. The 10C were pretty chill. Like, they were reasonable people. In the end, Tarka, not Tarkin, but Tarka is came around even. It emotionally as well. I mean, it's the utopian fiction that I've wanted for so long. I mean, other Star Treks have been doing it really well, but just it's the world as it should be. As much as Discovery, I've said before, seems to be very much the this is how you get to utopia show, it's now managing to do that, but also living in utopia and giving us that example. And it's honestly sad to think that there's only 3 more seasons. Just about. I mean, of course, there's no reason there has to be 7. People always kind of talk about the full 7. It's sort of the Star Trek tradition. I mean, if they can keep producing stories like that, they could go on. Discovery could be the longest running show in Star Trek history. It could be the Tom Baker of the franchise. I really hope when Discovery eventually leaves the air, we get some continuation in this time frame. Kind of like, well, back in the day, you had the Next Generation, which just spawned Deep Space Nine running concurrently, and then they passed the torch to Voyager. I don't believe in franchise fatigue at all. What I do believe in is what I call 24th century fatigue, where by the end of Voyager, you've spent 21 seasons in the 24th century, and it's all very sort of samey. You get burnt out. And, of course, if you're watching it nowadays, by, mid-late Voyager, you're kind of like, I could do with some Enterprise, just, spice things up a bit. And so that's why I really like the idea of Kurtzman's just, multi-genre, generally keep things pretty separate. And it's kind of why I'm resistant to more, 23rd century TOS stuff. That announcement that they've recast Kirk, if you haven't seen it, that's worth looking. I really hope we do get some continuation, because Discovery is just making this a beautiful time frame I want to be in. I mean, even if it's Academy, that's a very different show, but keep it kind of roughly in that, like Picard is taking that Voyager and pushing it forward. Lower Decks is kind of staying in that time frame, but giving more series. Prodigy's doing its own thing, but Picard's kind of the one pushing it forward. Ironic is they enter the 25th century only to promptly ignore it, was a nice headline I read with their time travel thing. But, if you get something now that's take Discovery, push it forward a bit. Because it's post-Nemesis content used to be the thing. If Star Trek ended today, for whatever reason, all these seasons just finished, I'd talk about post-Discovery content, I guess you'd call it. It's almost like this is Star Trek's present day to be now. I mean, Picard has a lot of the characters we know pushing forward, and so does Prodigy. But it's the kind of knowledge of, we're ending in Discovery. I love the Federation coming together again near the end. Where Navarre's in, Earth is now in, Andoria's in talks, and you love it after over 50 years of neglect and being forgotten and memes of those TOS masks. The Tellarites get their moment as Teller Prime never left the Federation. It's just, you were the ones that stuck it through. Let's talk about Book, what the Federation did with Book as well. That's a good one. I really like it. Because, as I've said before, the Federation's prison policy has always been about reform. I mean, it's been a correct prison policy. It's never been about punishment. It's been about reform. And Book is, reformed. You know, he did bad things for the right reasons, and it's always kind of a hard thing to deal with in that kind of prison system where it's like, the prison system can't do anything for Book because he acknowledges he's in the wrong. He knows he was wrong. He's not going to do it again. But his list of crimes is like so expansive. It like could have done so much. You know, let's not do results-oriented thinking, the worst kind of logical fallacy. I was like, well, what do you do with him? Because, like, putting him in prison doesn't really do much. Like, that's just pure punishment, revenge almost. And I really like the solution of having him help. I mean, it's a community service sentence. Just have him help people displaced by the DMA. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Because you don't have to reform him. There's nothing you can do. The Federation has never been one of putting someone in like a dark cell just to suffer. But it's like, force him to do some community service for some amount of time, probably just as long as it's needed. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's something he'd certainly be passionate about, and certainly do well, do the best he can. I mean, could you think of a better counselor than someone who also lost their planet and has recovered from that to the sense where they could live, you know, the normal sort of life? I mean, that's not really something you recover from totally, but I mean, it's a brilliant solution. I think I should acknowledge as well that Scooby-Doo was not a good tool to figure out the plot of Discovery. I think a lot of my predictions were wrong. I wonder if I had a right one. I think I did about some of the structure of these last few episodes, but if I could predict it, it'd be boring, right? I mean, there's some ways you can still make predictable work by being like super emotional and stuff like that, but I mean, it was unexpected, sort of the classic twists and turns sort of thing. It was enjoyable. It made sense. You could follow along with the plot, but never quite guess it or see how it was gonna go until at best, like right before or right when the cast did, which is the best kind of way to keep the mystery. As much as this is a vaguely mystery box kind of plot, I think it'll hold up on rewatches. I think, no, all of the past seasons of live-action Star Trek, so Discovery's first 3 and Picard's first, don't really get anything on a rewatch, because the mystery box is solved. You don't get much. Picard is better on a binge, I'll say, but a lot of what was there was gone. And I've praised before Enterprise Season 3 was great, where it was never about the Xindi or like the weapon or anything. It was about the people and what they would do when everything was on the line. I'm sort of realizing as I'm explaining that the summary I always give, this was the same. It was never really about the DMA or the 10C. It was about the people and them trying to figure out, solve through the problem, work together, and the different kind of ways people would react in that situation. And so you could watch it 100 times, and maybe some things are gone, knowing the ending, but so much of it is there that you don't lose anything. And I even really enjoyed Season 3. But when I had to rewatch it for Poorly Explained, the reason that video took so long is because I found it hard to watch in a lot of places. I don't think I actually did rewatch everything. I kind of cheesed it at the end where I rewatched the scenes with the negotiation of Vance and Osira so I could do that critique well and nothing else. And same for some of the other episodes. I had critiques written already. I didn't watch the 2-parter Mirrorverse universe because I kind of knew the jokes I wanted to make already. I didn't watch The Call because I knew that Doctor Who joke. It's like, for whatever reason, on a rewatch, I saw a lot more of the problems with Discovery than the enjoyment I got originally. And I don't think that'll be the case with this at all. There were a lot more episodic-y, bottle episode kind of things. With Tilly's shuttlecraft episode, sort of stuff like that. The First Contact will always be beautiful to watch. The last episode is in the same way The First Contact, the movie, that scene is always beautiful. It will always be beautiful. As far as First Contacts go, last episode was definitely the fantastic First Contact one. I do think they kind of dropped a lot of that in here. Like, you could just suddenly make full conversation with the 10C. Which, weird, we don't really get a name for them. I guess you can't really translate it. They don't have a verbal language, really, do they? So, like, they can't give us a name for themselves. They can kind of give a visual pattern. Anyway, yeah, I think they wanted their big speech, in the end, when they were actually talking face-to-face with the 10C. They wanted their eloquence. I honestly think you probably could have done something just as beautiful trying to go through the simplistic language. There's merit to both, but I think it did kind of take away from the last episode in some ways, where it's just like, the universal translator might as well have worked. Because, those sentences they were conveying, really complex, deep, emotional things. I can't remember some of the specifics, that there were some things, especially the president in her first speech, where I'm like, how the heck are you going to translate that? Like, you can't really do that. Another thing I wanted to mention, Detmer's, like, sacrifice, where they're like, we'll need a good pilot. And it's just, they kind of realize that Detmer has to sacrifice themselves. I thought was beautiful, and probably it was the perfect thing her character could have done from the start of season 3, where she was dealing with a PTSD and it was affecting her ability to fly, to, like, do her job. And you'd kind of thought that might have gotten resolved in season 3, but this felt like a great bookend of showing, no, she's past that. She's recovered, and now she's volunteering for this, and she's just looking like the I'm ready. And I thought that sacrifice is the best thing that possibly could happen to her character, and is better than anything that could have come in, like, future seasons. And then the general's just like, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh. Like, you still get some of that development just by the fact she was willing to volunteer, but I think it's so much less and a lot more empty than just having to watch her go through it and kind of seeing her be okay with that in doing her duty, essentially, for everyone. And it was weird. It's an interesting decision. I'd love to talk to the writers about it, that no one died. You had Tarka, sort of your villain, die. It kind of makes sense. His whole thing was being with Oros again, kind of accepting that's not a possibility, except in the afterlife, potentially. Or like his chance to jump or whatever. I'm not sure he really believed that he could do that. And that one works. But just that no one died, it is kind of your last episode. But I'm wondering if you're binging this, if Quajon was kind of set the standard of these people are mortal, I wonder if this is going to just get rid of that. And be like, no, everybody lives, Rose. All the time, everybody lives. Even, like, the general, who's a pretty minor character, I think, all things considered. Maybe one of those major minor characters. Like, now I gotta think of one. Admiral Ross? Like Admiral Ross, maybe? From Deep Space Nine. Shelley, was it? As another admiral. A lot of the admirals from 80s Star Trek, 80s, 90s Star Trek, actually. Like, I kind of get the message of the peaceful diplomacy is the way to go, everything works out, sort of thing, as opposed to the other solution, which is just loads of people die, and it probably doesn't really accomplish anything. I get that, but then there's also the things like, well, look, for Detmer's character, it would have been great. I honestly think if they would have died, I mean, they're an actress, an actual person who needs to kind of make money and have a job. They probably love doing Discovery, but it's an interesting balance. I'd love to have a conversation with the writers on kind of like why they chose to have literally everyone live, not even minor characters die. Just realizing Gray wasn't in that final montage of kind of like everyone with their family, was he? Which is kind of weird. He really kind of disappeared. I was surprised at how little he was in this season, because I remember, I think Star Trek Day as well, a lot of the marketing I was hearing this season was a lot about Gray getting his body, kind of being able to be part of all the family. And he like had one episode where he was kind of in Adira's head for a bit. One episode where they gave him his body, and then he just kind of had an episode where he's like, man, I can't really do anything on the ship, and left. And that was it. Discovery is really weird, because as much as I enjoy the episodes, I'm going to be like, oh man, I'm going to praise this so much. Like, I have so much to talk about. When I actually sit down in front of the camera for these general analysis bits, I'm often like, I literally have nothing to say. I don't know what to talk about. But I do have a lot, and this always happens, a lot of those little one-off, like, scene-by-scene bits. Like, oh, I'll have to remember to mention this in that scene. So let's get into the scene-by-scene, see what jogs my memory, and I just give Discovery a send-off, which is real sad. Seeing Federation headquarters warp to Earth was really fun. I mean, I was like, oh, I really want a model of that ship. And I'm like, hang on, is that Federation headquarters? I loved how the bits of it could kind of just leave in the evacuation. And that whole series was great. The series of the evacuation Earth with, all of Starfleet just kind of showing up, the desperation, I went into this before. I won't go too much into it again. It was just wonderful. Nice seeing Tilly again, like kind of bring the Academy in. Just literally everyone is doing this evacuation, and I loved in the end. We'll skip ahead a bit. I almost wonder the way that scene was set up if the Federation headquarters is moving back to Earth, which would be great to see, and because they had kind of the whole fleet there, which felt weird just sitting there doing nothing. They lined up all their shuttles like I do with my Eagle Moss models, ignore the fact they're all packed away. I still can't wait to get my hands on those models. But, the Universe Collection Episode 8, it's like number 8 is on my desk over there. And I'm just having to wait as an American. I mentioned the number 8 because that is the most recent one that you could get in America. I realize as well, it's weirded me out a lot. I haven't actually mentioned it in a video, that when they talk about our solar system, they talk about Earth and Titan as if they're the only two inhabited bodies, which feels really, really weird. I get that maybe Earth would have gone in on itself and just into Earth, more easily defendable maybe, after the burn. It feels weird though, because like the whole system was colonized. I don't know if Mars they ever recolonized. It would make sense. But why is Titan still there? Of all places, if everyone else decolonized, why didn't we decolonize Titan? And the reason I bring it up now is because we see in this episode that Earth is inhabited with many city lights. The moon. The moon is inhabited with many city lights. So why don't we ever talk about the moon? They might have mentioned they were evacuating the moon. I had to kind of watch it with this TV's audio. Still can't get my headphones working. So maybe I missed a line. Some of them were a bit muffled for me. But it feels really weird to me that our solar system is Earth and Titan and nothing else. It just wouldn't be Star Trek if they didn't attempt to have their Vulcan do a mind meld, now would it? Oh, and I also want to mention that naming this episode Coming Home was a very interesting choice. I forgot to mention it in the intro, but the moment I saw that, I went, oh, so I know how this is going to end now. I knew how it was going to end before. They were going to succeed. We kind of knew that. But it's the kind of knowing where you're it's the knowing that isn't actually knowing. We didn't know objectively that they would succeed. But we all know that is writers don't really have them fail. But making the episode be called Coming Home was just now I actually know for a fact. It would have been kind of funny if they named the episode Discovery Wins and then they lost or something like that. But honestly, I think that would just taken away my uncle, spoilers for the movie The Martian, but when my uncle went to watch The Martian when it came out with I think a cousin and maybe their boyfriend or something, but someone leaned over to him in his ear and went, "He dies in the end." And my uncle was really mad because he was like, "Oh man, you spoiled the movie." And the whole time he went watching the movie, he was really mad because God, he's doing so well. I want him to live. God, I hate that he's gonna die. And of course, he doesn't actually die in the end. The friend who'd seen the movie was just messing with my uncle, but it ruined the movie for him because he spent the whole time thinking that he was actually gonna die. And so it's probably good that you shouldn't do that, is what I'm saying. You also probably shouldn't name your episode He Lives in the End. I thought for a moment they might actually destroy the spore drive for good, which would have been an interesting choice. Not necessarily one I would have disapproved of. It was also an interesting decision because it's they're not going to do Voyager again, right? It'd be kind of interesting. Voyager's a lot of missed opportunities in retrospect, I think, where people's oh, it would have been cool if they did this. And it's rather famous. Rick Berman has an allergy to serialization. He breaks out in horrible hives. It's really bad, you know. So they didn't do any of that. And so there's a lot of moments in Voyager where it's like, oh, I should have done the Year of Hell. Or a lot of people talk about maybe the Maquis is just not becoming Starfleet. It would be interesting to see a modern Star Trek who would actually do those sorts of things, do Voyager. But also, Alex Kurtzman is not in the business of let's just do Voyager again. Which I'm realizing Strange New Worlds comes out in like 7 weeks and is, in theory, let's just do TOS again. In theory. But it is an intriguing idea of a modern Voyager, but also it just be Voyager. Like, what more could you really do that's new other than doing everything Voyager should have done? I suppose you could argue season 1 of Discovery is doing Deep Space Nine again, and that it's a war. Like, I think you'd be on shaky ground for that, especially as it's just one season. And I don't think any Star Trek has ever been, let's just do this, but again. And I think that's probably a big strength of the franchises. And yeah, I'm not sure how much I'd really want that. God, I'm not gonna like Strange New Worlds, am I? It's gonna make a lot of people upset. Tarka's, I finally learned his name, Tarka's sort of arc, his ending, was definitely unexpected, but not unwelcome. I think I like what they did with it. It probably might have felt a bit empty to have him just kind of be always an antagonist and he just kind of would have been there and left, almost a hollow villain. But especially kind of bits of like, Oros would be doing what you're doing right now, and those sort of bits. But right in the end, he kind of realized what he was doing in the hopelessness of it all, that he knew the whole time. He just kind of wouldn't admit to himself, is really strong. I mean, there's a lot of bits of this episode that made me tear up a bit, like my eyes water a bit. I'm sure some of these bits were amongst them. This is the first time, though, for Discovery where I think I mentioned before, my partner, I've shown them the Kirk stuff, basically everything up to the Next Generation. And we're waiting basically until I graduate, and we actually have time to go through the whole thing. But this is the first thing at Discovery where it's like, I can't wait to get to this with Alex, because it's just great. And I want to share the things I love with them. Like, season 3 was good, but it's not quite that. And there's a lot of moments in Star Trek, it's like, man, I can't wait for them to get to that episode. But this is the first time I've like, a lot of modern Star Trek was like, and I guess we'll end with this, and like complain about how bad it is. As of course, you know, the first 3 seasons of Star Trek were Discovery season 1, 2, and Picard. But now it's definitely getting its strengths, and it feels like there's actually stuff I want to do in here, and I want to reach with them. I'll say a lot of the emotion behind Book's death was taken away from me by the fact that one of my first thoughts was, oh, the 10C have him. Which is admittedly, there's no evidence for that. But it's like, I mean, it felt like the kind of obvious. You can have, as a writer, you can have that emotion, but not actually kill Book. What's the comic saying? Is if you don't see them die, they haven't died. And maybe it was like that. We'd actually have to see Book die somehow. But then when he came back, a lot of emotion was also removed, because I went, is this actually Book? Like, this is the 10C. For all we knew, Michael was like, I'm sad with how Book, and they were like, oh, okay, let's just replicate a new Book and give it to her. Which I've talked about in my Picard reviews, the kind of, is that still the same person as before? It's something that, like, the tendency shouldn't have done, is just replicate a new Book, which they didn't. I'm glad they objectively cleared that up. And even Burnham asked, are you real? And Book's like, yeah, I am. Of course Book would say that. Like, because he feels real, and he feels exactly like Book. But it's something that they should have come clean about if they did do it. And so the fact that it went so long without that resolution, I couldn't have that emotional connection of like of anything until they said, no, this is actually Book. We intercepted his transporter beam, which was kind of weird, but hey, aliens, you know, it's different cultures. And yeah, by that point, I mean, all the emotion was kind of done. They were moving on to the next thing. I quite like this sequence with Tilly and Vance just kind of chilling, waiting to die, essentially. I really love Vance as a character. I have from the beginning. A lot of people do. Where, he's a great admiral. Off the top of my head, probably the first, like, truly great, really good admiral, if we discount people like Picard. They were captains that became admirals, Picard and Janeway. He's a cool guy as well, just kind of hang around. They've done a good job of humanizing him. Like, he has his family that he can't see. I just love his character. I don't know who plays Vance. I'm really bad with names. And I know all the classic actor. Okay, if you're from a series where the credits said something like Patrick Stewart, Jean-Luc Picard, I know all of the classic actors. If you're from a series like Enterprise that just said the name of the actor and not tied to their character, I don't know your name. I know Scott Bukata, which took a long time to learn, and I actually don't know anyone else. If you told me some of their names, like, I think I'd know T'Pol's Jolene B something? Balak? Why don't the credits put the name of the person in their character? Because it's the only way I'm ever gonna learn their names. Here we have another scene where as soon as they beamed down to the planet, I went, oh look, they're not using green screens. They have their monitor room they can play around with. Maybe it would have worked if they'd been more reserved in how they do it, but I've complained a lot. Like, last episode had a great one. I think it was last episode at least, where it worked, and I commented on it. But this one, it's like, everything is going to be in infinite space with no detail that actually matters, and a bunch of floating things, and a room you'll never remember because we have our nice new toy and we want to play with it. And they're huge aliens. Like, it's a weird because it should make sense, but I think it's the fact that, like in the original series, every planet was a bunch of paper mache rocks. In Doctor Who, every planet is a Welsh quarry. This feels like in 30 years' time, people are going to look back and laugh at how every alien planet was an infinitely vast space with no real detail because it's way too big to do anything. It's just its vastness. And if everything is vast, it loses its meaning. There's no impact. It'd be interesting to see if I'm still doing this in 20 to 30 years and then going back to comments like that and being like, was I right? I've thought about doing videos where I go back and look at my trailer analysis for seasons that are now over and see how right I was. Oh, and the 10C remind me a lot of some of the Leviathans from the game Stellaris. I don't remember which ones. I think there's like a dragon one, but I don't know. Maybe they were better as just abstract aliens. But then thematically, if you don't actually have something like this face to face, you do kind of lose on the whole connection theme. Oh yeah, you had the sequence of events of take the general to sickbay, right? Makes sense. And then you had Dr. Colbert, the next time we see anyone, it like goes down to hang out with his family. I'm like, that's all right and stuff, but like, you're the doctor. Not only that, you're the doctor who does everything. And sure, you're probably not the chief medical officer. Maybe you're doing more therapy now. I think you're still the doctor, though. Surely you should be in sickbay, like, treating her. We haven't heard that she's stable or anything. He hasn't commented on it. And I'm like, maybe the chief medical officer is doing it. The woman who has a higher rank that we assume is the chief medical officer. She's not. You know how I know that? Because she's on the planet talking to the 10C. It's like, who the heck is treating the general? I know there's other medical staff, but surely this is the most important task for the medical department right now. This is the only task for them. No, there are other burn victims. The consoles did explode. It was a Star Trek. That bothered me. Yeah, look, there she is. The medical officer lady I was talking about. And of course, as the DMA backs off from Earth, all the asteroids get sucked away from Earth because the gravitational waves pull them backwards. It's not really how anything works. I mean, I knew it would happen as soon as the asteroids started hitting, but like, that doesn't mean I gotta be happy about it. Also, can we just, again, bring to your attention that the 10C lost their planet because some asteroids hit it? This is Earth defending itself from the entire asteroid belt and doing a damn good job at it. Add like a bucket-a-jillion years of development, like technological advancement, and then tell me that the 10C couldn't defend themselves from some asteroids outside the galaxy. I'm kind of disappointed the episode didn't do what I've always said, where the lesson of the Kobayashi Maru is, I don't believe in no-win scenarios. Like, they bookended it with the whole thing, but she was kind of like, oh, you understand the Kobayashi Maru in no-win scenarios. No one died, except for Tarka, who kind of wanted to die. This was the win scenario. You could not have imagined a better win scenario than this. Which I think is probably kind of the point. I mean, it's why it's the bookend. It's the opposite of Wrath of Khan's bookend. But I'm surprised they didn't directly acknowledge it. And actually, you know what? If you want to do Voyager again, there is a Voyager in this show. Did anyone else think it was weird when, like, he was like, oh, we're going to beam him to the shuttle in 5 minutes. I didn't realize that meant they were literally just going to beam him, like, not even check to see what's going on. Just beam him out onto his shuttlecraft. Do you think they grabbed his cat? Oh, they did grab his cat. My laptop is over here, connected to the TV. That's why I'm over here. I don't know why I like it so much, but I like the depiction of Earth, that's the wrong way, on its side. You know, not really traditionally up. I don't know why. It's one of those things where it's like, that feels like it's artsy, it's saying something, but I did like it. Finally, I thought it was a bit weird that the resolution of Saru and, I knew I'd forget her name, the Vulcan president, she said it, and I'm like, I'm going to try and remember that, but I'm going to forget it. Terrell, was it? That might be someone else. That might be Spock's wife or the president, whatever. I thought it was a bit weird that, like, it wasn't a bit more for a show like Discovery. Like, there was no first kiss or anything, or any of the sort of modern stuff you'd expect. But then I realized that, like, as I was doing this, actually, that it was like, well, no, that makes sense. For, like, both these characters, they take a relationship rather slow. Like, they don't really feel like those kind of people, that kind of couple, at least not yet. And so, you know, I'm actually kind of proud, respect that, like, they didn't do the sort of modern, the hero gets the first kiss, or like anything like that. It wasn't a shot of them naked in bed together. It was a show of them, like, doing some gardening, which, yeah, I mean, that's how it should be. And thus, 54 minutes, I thought that said 34 minutes, we've caught up. Season 4, the best season of Discovery, by far, clearly. A great season of Star Trek. A great story. I mean, tell your friends, if you know someone who gave up on Star Trek, gave up on Discovery early on when it was awful, this is the season that is why they should go back to it. They might even be able to start it this season, but I've got a thing tonight, actually. I'm at one of my partner's family who is a big Star Trek fan. I think they gave up Discovery. I'm going to tell them season 4 just ended. You should go back. And I'm going to tell them that it was fantastic and that they should give it another go, because it was. Well done, Discovery. Well done, Kurtzman. Well done, Michelle Paradise, who the show has definitely taken a step up after she got brought on as a showrunner, producer with season 3. Well done to the general writing staff, who, of course, none of these stories would have been as good without them. The CG department, fantastic. The ship's designs, the everything. I mean, well done to the whole team. I think everything was on form here, and I'm sure there were some episodes that I didn't quite like as much, or were a bit more iffy, at the very least not perfection, but you've made one of the best seasons of Star Trek that there is, and well done. I can't wait for season 5, what direction you take it in, and you have my faith, and I can't wait for more. So thanks for watching. The Picard review will be out as soon as I can, but bear in mind my upload speed is abysmal. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.